Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to the City Delivery Committee meeting of Tuesday the 16th of June 2026. In terms of health and safety, if the alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest emergency exit. The assembly point is down Devonport Road. Please also be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Members, as always, could you please remember to speak clearly into your microphones and only one speaker at a time for clarity, and mobile phones off, please. I'll just ask for Councillor Rolleston to start us with an opening karakia and welcome our public forum speakers. Hemi.
Tēnā koe te temana, koutou nā memo te kaunihira, tēnā koutou, I mua taku kōrero, me te kōrero o tēnei ata, he mi arawa ki te ao Māori nā te mea, ko hinga, nā pau e toru o te ao Māori. Te timatanga, tā tāmati riri, tā inō kia, tā Hirini Moko Mead, me te rangatira hoki a Whatarangi Winiata, Hikurangi Maunga, Ngāti Awa, Raukawa. Tēnō pauri te ao Māori o tēnei wā, nō reira, moi mai rā. Just acknowledging that in the past month, Māoridom have lost some of the most esteemed leaders of this world of te ao Māori. And interesting, the average age of those rangatira was 92. So it's quite a buck in the system, I suppose. And those that even know a little bit of Māoridom will know that those were some of the best. And leaders of an ilk that probably we won't see again. Scholars, leaders, professors, had every qualification and leadership, and they've left a legacy through a number of initiatives, particularly the wānanga of Awanuiarangi and Ngāti Raukawa, that will continue to go. So while Māoridom mourns, they also celebrate the significant contributions that those rangatira have made. So I just wanted to mihi kia to those rangatira at this time. Hoi anō, ko huri anai nei ki te kaupapa tēnei rā, he mihi poto ki nā memo te hapori ko tai mai nei, ki te whiriwhiri kōrero e pāna tō kaupapa. Kia kaha tō kōrero I tēnei rā, he mihi poto ki a koe, hoki I te rangatira Joe, ko tai mai nei, te mana o wharero, o Ngāti Kuku, nai tūkairangi, nai te rangi, kia kaha, pai ki te kete tō kanohi ki roto I tēnei whare, I raro I tēnei kaupapa o tēnei rā no reira, tēnā koutou, kia noi tātou. Tui ronga, tui raro, tui roto, tui waho, tui te tangata karongo, te ākarongo, te pō, nau mai te ihi, te wehi, te mana, te tapu, paupau ki roto ki a mātou mō tēnei ata. Ko ia rā e rongo o whakiriraki ki runga, turuturu whakamaua ki a tīna. Haumi e hui e. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rolleston. Just on that note as well, I suppose this is the City Delivery Committee. Before I ask for apologies, I just will also just quickly acknowledge the retirement of Kane Williamson, a Tauranga-born legend of New Zealand and world cricket. Quietly, unassumingly stepped aside from his professional playing career during the week. And I suppose the reason I think it's worthwhile bringing up here, he has been quite an incredible leader of New Zealand sport and cricket for a very long time, and right up there with some of the greatest players in the history of the game. Test batting averages, I think, in the top 3 or 4. Incredible leadership of the New Zealand cricket team over a number of years, and a very quiet, unassuming young man born and bred here, so I think it's just worthwhile that we acknowledge him, and he's been a tremendous servant to the sport of cricket and the world of cricket, but hopefully he'll come back here and spend a bit more time locally, and he can continue his wonderful influence in New Zealand. So, yeah, thank you, Kane, for all you've offered the sporting world in New Zealand. Now, just calling for apologies. I note we have Councillor Kurak joining us online, so we should have a full house. So there's no apologies. Can I call for a mover and a seconder? Oh, good, we don't need it. We could just move straight on. Gee, I'm following this too much by the rote. I better delete that. So now we do move to public forum, item number 3 on your agenda for those watching online. First up, we have Bryce Cole. He's going to speak to us about Birch Ave burnout. Sounds a bit like something from Burgerfield, but it's a way more serious topic.
Good morning, my name's Bryce Cole. I'm the Director and CEO for Gourmet Foods, Pat's Pantry, Ponsonby Pies in 144 Birch Avenue. We have a constant stream of hoons coming down in the avenue and doing burnouts. I have a very short video for you to have a look at so you can see some of the issues that are occurring. I'll just pull that up full. It's about 1 minute and a half. A lot of these things aren't seen till the next day. That sign was bent fairly substantially and had to have a forklift to push it back into space. This red car has been doing this on a regular basis up until the last 2 weeks when the police have actually finally caught hold of it. This is only one or two of many, many that come down there on a regular basis. This involves children and adults with children on their shoulders running around chasing these cars, trying to video them, and you'll see that in a second. Also with doors open, filming themselves on the car, trying to make it look good. They wear the tyres right out so that their rims are scraping on the road and damaging the roads as well. So as you can see in the parcel, there's a few bits and pieces that have come off either the roads or the water mains and water covers. They take those off regularly and use them for skidding under their tyres. That also with McDonald's trays as well, and we find those littered around all over the place. The other week we had someone come down there with a pallet, towing a pallet up and down the road behind their vehicles, trying to ride on them and just damaging things. What I see is that with this sort of carry-on, we've called the police, obviously, and the police are very, very busy, as you know, and sometimes they will get them, sometimes they don't. I live in Collingwood Street and hear them on a regular basis. My issue is that there is damage being done to both the council property and private properties, and obviously it is a serious matter when you've got children running around in that sort of environment. What I'd like to suggest is one of probably illegal ways of doing it. There's plenty of other ways it could be done, but they would all be illegal. What I think we should be doing is potentially getting a camera down there that has the ability to get number plate recognition. Our cameras are designed not for that, but I think there is a lot of that going on down there, and I think having someone that can recognise that there is a camera down there will reduce that and slow it down, and obviously because they're monitored, police will be able to be notified quicker than someone like myself who hears it, and then by the time you get through police comms, they've already gone. That's pretty much everything I have for you today, but it is very concerning. I've spoken to quite a few of the other businesses up and down the street, and they're all behind it. A lot of them are. Thank you to Councillor Schuler for coming down and viewing the situation, the mess on the road, and talking to one or two of the people down the street. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. I was looking forward to seeing that one of the crowbar being thrown at your sign to knock your camera off
Sorry, I didn't have that one. I thought I shortened it down a bit, but we had a separate camera up on a pole that was there, and one of the guys had obviously recognised it and had a very long crowbar, was throwing it up, and finally hit the camera and smashed it off, and then put it in their car and took off. So the police probably have that sitting in their compound yard because it was in the Red Falcon that they got the other night.
It's a bit of a nefarious activity. Any questions? Councillor Taylor.
Because you moved.
Thanks for your presentation, Bryce. Just police action on this, like Birch Avenue, from my recollection, is nearly 2 kilometres long. If they got a call and knew it was happening, they'd basically have them cornered.
Yeah, if they're available, certainly. The biggest problem is that the police are very seriously busy, and half the time they don't have cars available to look for that. They have got 2 in the past month and a half. One was the mate of the Red Falcon, which they did chase up through Waihi Road and finally got. Both of them unregistered vehicles. Both of them were expected to have gone to the wreckers. So that is, yep, these guys are driving around with vehicles that are really subpar.
Can I respond from a staff perspective? Is that okay? Thank you. I'm in charge of transport. This is a concern to us. It always is. We see this around the city a little, so thank you for keeping on highlighting it. This is a police matter. What we can do is, if we see it, refer it to the police, so there is a quicker response. For that, we need cameras in that area. And for the cameras to operate, we need power connections. Both of those are currently in progress. PowerCo currently has a dramatic backlog, so it might not be for a few months until that happens. But we are aware and we are working on it, and we thank you for highlighting it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Bryce. I'll now call up next group of speakers on the public forum. You're welcome to all come up together. We have, it's for the Mount Air Quality group, and we have Dr. Jim Miller, Joey McKenzie. We also have Heidi Hughes and Emma Jones and Joel Ngātuere. So you're welcome to all come up. I think I've had a catch up with all of you before the meeting, so yep, look, I'm more than happy to, you sort of know the brief of the time, and I'm sure there'll be some questions as well. So it looks like Emma and Heidi are going to start, and then we'll go to Dr. Jim, Joey, and then finish with Joel. Thank you. We'll keep a loose track on time, but do not want to pressure you.
Hi, is this working okay? Hi everybody, I'm Emma Jones and I'm here with Heidi Hughes, and we represent Clear the Air Mount Maunganui. We're a lot of you know us from many years of our advocacy and our fight for environmental outcomes in the Mount. We were just really briefly, we were born of a group of parents who were really concerned about the air pollution that was engulfing our schools, Omanu Primary and Mount College and Mount Intermediate, and the sports fields. And it was really, truly horrendous when we all got together in about 2018 and then met Joel and the Whareroa community and realised that we were really missing a community voice. So through many years of just really trying to understand what was happening in conjunction with the council's understanding the level of pollution. So it's been, we've put in a lot of time and effort, and it's been a fight, but the formation of the working party has really been a critical part of this journey. And as you'll see later on, there has been some progress. However, it has taken a lot of public lobbying to get these results, and there's still a lot of work to do. The forum has been really valuable. It's been great to be able to sit around the table with council members regional council, industry, whāriroa. It's been quite contentious early on. We had a lot of really tough meetings because there's a lot of hurt and anger from the community at the level of air that we have to suffer at the schools and the surrounding sports fields, and the workers in the Mount as well have really had years and years and years of just horrible air pollution. So overall, it was great to have the Working Party as a forum to express these concerns and to really start to understand how our very unique community can work together and live together and thrive together. So having some of the main players, the port and some of the big polluters around the table, we have been able to work towards these common goals. The fear we have is if we hadn't been able to rally, that we would just be in a really dire situation now. We're up against kind of behemoth global companies, and there's they don't have a conscience, so we've had to bring that conscience to the table. We also see the Mount as such a unique community, and it is an evolving city, and the tensions between industry and community, it's really at a critical point. And we think in terms of our view on how the city can work together is it will solve the problem of air pollution if we are all engaged in this. I'm going to hand over to Heidi to talk a little bit more about that, and so the important part that the City Council can play in going forward.
Kia ora. Yeah, thank you. One of the things that we have found missing from the Working Party is any government representation. So the NZTA has been notably absent, and so have any of the MPs or representatives. So that kind of, and we know at the moment, the RMA is changing. We've had some really good wins in terms of, for example, Higgins only have a year and a half left to run now, and have sold to a massive international corporation. But they're now talking about maybe being able to postpone that date of closure out for for an extended period of time. And that's where we know that we really need to keep that pressure on, and we really need to know that when we're coming into a new phase of the RMA, that we need to have advocacy from this council to government to hold on to the things that we've fought for really hard with some of these court cases that we've been involved in over the years. The last thing I just wanted to talk about is the other piece that we think that Tauranga City Council can be very strongly advocating for is the spatial plan process. We'd really like to ensure that that the community are involved in what a vision for that area looks like, and this is a 30, 50 year, 100-year vision for our city. We know that the city's going out and out. We've got Rangiuru and we've got Tauriko, and we think that there's massive opportunities for those, for these companies that are currently sitting in the Mount to look at, where they might be able to go into the future when these sites come available, instead of these sites that come up then being put into more factories and more heavy polluting industries. So we have a vision for the Mount, and it's around there being more people being able to live, work and play there. We've got an incredible beach community. We've got amazing harbours. We would like to see that vision in our spatial plan. So that's the place where we'd like to put the next piece of work. Thanks.
Dr. Jim.
Morena, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm Dr. Jim Miller. I'm a medical officer of health, public health physician, and I've been working in originally Toitura Public Health, but now National Public Health Service, largely based in the Bay of Plenty and Lakes area since 2007. So thanks for the opportunity to say a few words about air quality and health in the Mount Maunganui area and more widely across our whole region. I think air quality, from my perspective, has clearly been on people's minds for a little bit longer than we might be talking about today. The situations I think that we found ourselves in the around about the 2016, let's say the last decade or so, has probably been, certainly in my view, the result of kind of decades of decisions that have been made around planning, regulation, monitoring and enforcement. These things don't become an issue overnight. My specific engagement over the last 10 years, now I would be notified of poisoning from contamination of the environment as a notifiable condition, and I became aware of some allegations along those lines around the Aerodrome Road area, late 2017-18. I'd also been involved in submitting on the Regional Council's Regional Air Plan review, and from 2016 on, that really started around about then. So that's the kind of time frame I've been involved. I think it's just been mentioned that led to, I commissioned a report around the concerns around Aerodrome Road and the dust pollution there. The Toitura was involved in the Environment Court. I think it was originally there were submissions for the air plan, but then it ended up as appeals in the Environment Court over a number of years. And in the middle of this, there's obviously the underlying issue is, well, why are we interested in air pollution? Well, because air pollution harms health, and there's very good evidence to that effect. As part of that, through our organisation, we commissioned a number of regular updates from what is now PSF Science and was ESR, and I think quite importantly a health impact assessment which was published in 2023. I've also been involved in a few media interviews around that particular issue. Cutting to the chase on that, poor air quality, particularly particulates, but there's a number of other pollutants that would be of concern, does harm health, and I think that's been widely accepted. Certainly was accepted through the Environment Court by the councils that were involved. One of the important things is that we can actually quite accurately assess or estimate the impact, particularly for particulates. And PM10, that's particulate matter, 10 microns, is the one that the exceedance of the national standard led to the Mount Maunganui airshed being designated a polluted airshed. Breathing in particulates has a direct impact on health, particularly around respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease. You can see that in deaths and hospital admissions, but also in restricted activity days. And there's a lot of, we've only got 5 minutes, so there's a lot of information in the reports that we commissioned, and they're available on the PHF website. One thing I would stress, though, is that from a health perspective, it's not so much the peaks in pollution, which is what the national standard looks at, the kind of daily peaks, and they have improved. It's the chronic exposure. So the annual averages for particulate measurements are probably more important from a health perspective in terms of the impact on the community. So really just finishing that bit, health has been and still is being affected by current pollution levels. I mean, there's been improvements, but it's still not what I'd like to see. Positive outcomes, we've definitely got better monitoring. Prior to 2019, there really was only a couple of monitors in the area. So in some respects, it's hardly surprising that we didn't breach the air standard. But once that was adequately monitored, there was definitely breaches. I think there was 19 breaches in 2019. So really, it was unearthing or uncovering a problem that had clearly been there for a while. The regional air plan, so that's the regional councils for the whole of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council area. It's much more air is now much more appropriately regulated, particularly around some of the industries that produce dust as part of their processes. And as I said during those hearings, the previous air plan clearly had failed in its objective of protecting health, because we ended up with a polluted airshed and clearly some impacts on health. There have been some improvements in air quality, and I think we'll hear some of that in the presentation, but those have been largely around the peaks. And I think that the current average air quality for over the year is still above the guideline values. Is probably just under the New Zealand guideline value, and is certainly a good bit above the WHO guideline value that obviously I would like to see us aiming towards. We're here to kind of talk about the Mount Maunganui Air Quality Working Group. I think that was a really good initiative that I think probably came from some of the Environment Court discussions, and the Regional Council has organised that. I think, as Emma was saying, there was quite a bit of robust discussion initially, but I think it's now there's an acceptance that we do have a problem that collectively is the only way really to see improvements. It's not just about particulates. There's other concerns, and we'll probably hear those from some of the other discussions. Odour is still an issue, and there are other pollutants. We do concentrate on PM10 and PM2.5 because that's what we've been monitoring for the longest, but nitrous oxides, which are particularly from traffic, are becoming more of a concern in the health literature, so that's something that needs to be kept on. Now, there's a key recommendation from the Environment Court, and this is, in my view, the key recommendation is that there needs to be a plan, a written plan to reduce cumulative pollution. It's gone by a number of names, but that was certainly, I think the wording was, it was a strong recommendation from the Justices to the Regional Council to produce one, but clearly we need to do that together. I think I've said that it's been a really good forum, the Mount Maunganui Air Quality Working Group, in building that shared understanding, and it is quite complex. It's a complex issue, and the interventions are complex. Viewpoints and opinions have differed, but it's been really positive that people, I think, have been pretty honest in coming out with those differing viewpoints. My kind of take-home message for Tauranga City Council would be engage robustly in the development of that plan. I certainly intend to, particularly around your roles in spatial planning and the responsibilities you have under the Health Act. Please continue to support the working group. The average particulate levels are still too high, and I think we need a concerted effort to continue. I look forward to the discussion on the paper. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Jim. And now over to Joey McKenzie, Port of Tauranga. Welcome, Joey.
Tēnā koutou. My name is Joey McKenzie. I'm the Environmental Manager for Port of Tauranga. I've held this position since early 2018 and been a member of the Mount Maunganui Air Quality Working Party since its inception. The Air Quality Working Party brings together what you could label as a bit of a ragtag group of stakeholders from across the Mount Maunganui area. Whilst it is an interesting collection, and we may not always agree on some of the details, I think it's fair to say that we all share a common interest, and that is improved air quality in the Mount Maunganui area and the associated positive health outcomes associated to that. For Port of Tauranga, the value in the Air Quality Working Party has been to be able to connect with other areas of the community, to discuss the actions that we are taking, to share some of the measured improvements we are seeing on our site in terms of both short-term and long-term dust reductions. But I think probably equally a big part of it is the benefit of being able to sit down and amongst our neighbours and actually listen and hear the viewpoints of others and appreciate their positions as well. Early on in the piece there was a handful of industry participants in the Working Party. The port was one of them, Balance was there, a couple of the other larger industries were there. But I suppose I need to acknowledge the great work undertaken by Priority One, who jumped on board partway through, and their goal, which was self-appointed, was to actually get a better collective across all of industry in the Mount Maunganui area. This was the starts of the Mount Maunganui Industrial Environmental Accord. For those who aren't familiar, it essentially looked to sign up industries across Mount Maunganui who actually wanted to do better and want to be part of the change. Upon signing, those industries were tasked with identifying actions that they could take to improve environmental outcomes, and then a collective holding to account of those industries and actually helping each other out to move forward and do better. Through that connection into the Mount Maunganui Industrial Network, we've seen a greater influence from industry, great reporting back on those actions and the actions that are being completed, and I think just a better representation across of the industrial area, and everyone's jumping in and doing their bit, which has been a really positive, I think, step change in the group. That's probably about all that I have to mention on that, other than to thank the other participants as well who have sat in the Working Party with us. Very much agree to the comments made that there was some pretty tough conversations early on, but I think the group has developed, and by all means, I'm not saying that everything is done and everything is fixed. There's still plenty of work to do, but it's good to actually be in a collaborative, forward-looking process. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Joey, and we'll finish up with you, Joel. Welcome.
O tēnā tātou, tuataira e mi ana kia koe. E ika, mō tō kareke me tō mi I whakatiwhiratu I nei. And just support you, Chair, with acknowledgements for the great Kane Williamson. And just bringing to light that there's another Tauranga Moana local on the sporting scene. He's actually in the starting lineup tomorrow night for Queensland, Britton Nikora. Breda Narataki, born in Matapi, Te Kurua Matapi. So, and while we're acknowledging people, great people from Tauranga Moana, I thought we'd just start with that. Obviously, you want to acknowledge I don't know if I'll probably call you guys colleagues now. It's been so long in this space. But yeah, I do want to acknowledge, obviously, Jim, for continuing to raise the real cumulative impact on all communities. Emma, goes without saying, you and Heidi, and Joey here. I guess the situation is just the situation that we're all in. Before I do start, though, I do want to acknowledge some of the industries that have made change. Balance Agri-Nutrients, obviously that was an economic decision. However, that was a positive, I feel that was a positive change, obviously for the airshed. And Waste Management New Zealand, the CE has become in, and we have an MOU, here's an MOU directly with Ngāti Kuku and Whareroa, and a full commitment from Waste Management New Zealand to exit at the end of their current consent, which was 10 years. And finally, JSWAP, who have, I guess, sought to get ahead of the curve and have made positive changes on and I guess their storage out on Hull Road. So it's I think it's really important to acknowledge positive change. So while I guess you guys have heard me and obviously being very vocal on what's in front of us, and I will speak to some things here, but we do need to acknowledge those positive things that are occurring in our community. I guess I won't introduce myself because I've met you all before at our marae, and you all know that I'm here speaking on behalf of Ngāti Kuku and Whareroa. In acknowledging the establishment of the Air Quality Working Party, that was born from a conversations or presentations that was had in 2019 to the Tauranga Moana Advisory Group. Obviously, Regional Council, City Council are both there, and reps from all iwi. So after discussions there, and it was put to the floor from the Chair, Charlie Tawhiao, and so I just want to acknowledge TCC, Regional Council and the Tauranga Moana Advisory Group for pushing for the establishment of the Equality Working Party. But for many years, our community has fought to have these issues taken seriously. Today we have councils, industry, community representatives and mana whenua sitting around the same table. We have better communication, stronger relationships and greater willingness to work together, as you've heard this morning. That's progress. But I also think we need to be honest about something. The Equality Working Party exists because previous systems failed. If planning systems, regulatory systems and governance systems had adequately protected communities from cumulative impacts over the last 50 years, there would have been no need for the Working Party to exist. The Working Party is both a success and a warning. A success because people are now working together. A warning because it reminds us what happens when problems are left unresolved for too long. For Ngāti Kuku, this issue is not theoretical. Our connection to Whareroa stretches back hundreds of years, long before the port, long before the airport, long before the industrial estate, long before the roads, rail corridors, and infrastructure that now surrounds us. Over those generations, we have watched Tauranga grow into one of New Zealand's most successful cities. The port grew, industry grew, infrastructure grew, population grew, prosperity grew, but growth is never free. Every benefit has a cost. The prosperity enjoyed by Tauranga was not shared equally, neither were its costs. While Tauranga benefited from industrialisation and economic growth, Whareroa increasingly carried the cumulative impacts, not from one consent, not from one company, not from one decision, but from hundreds of decisions made over decades. Each one considered separately, each one justified on its own merits, yet collectively creating the reality we live with today. I believe there is an important lesson in that. If Whareroa did not already exist and we were planning Tauranga from scratch today, would we deliberately place a marae, a papakainga, kohanga reo, residential community, retirement flats, in the middle of the industrial transport and infrastructure environment that exists around it? Obviously, the answer is no. And if we would not make those decisions today, then we must be honest enough to ask whether we are doing enough to address the consequences of yesterday's decisions. Whareroa should never be viewed as a planning success that requires mitigation. It should be viewed as a planning warning that demands reflection. That is why I believe the most important question facing this council is not what happened in the past. It is what happens next. The government is replacing the Resource Management Act. New planning legislation is coming. My challenge to you is simple. What lessons from Whareroa is Tauranga City Council taking to Wellington as the next planning system is designed? What is Tauranga City Council doing to ensure the next planning framework properly recognises cumulative impacts on communities? How are you ensuring that future planning systems do not simply repeat the mistakes of the last one? Because the challenge facing Whareroa today was not created by a single consent. It was created by hundreds of decisions made over generations. And if we fail to learn that history, we risk repeating it. Not just here, but somewhere else in New Zealand. The true test of leadership is not whether we recognise a problem after it exists. The true test of leadership is whether we learn enough from it to ensure it does not happen again. We cannot change the decisions that created the situation, but we are responsible for the decisions that come next. Air quality is not the story. Air quality is the symptom. The story that happens when the costs of progress fall on one community while the benefits are enjoyed by many. My hope is that future generations will be able to look back and say that this council was willing to learn from that history, honest enough to confront it, and courageous enough to act on it. Tēnā koutou. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, questions? Councillor Taylor? And then Councillor Baker.
I've got a couple of questions, but thanks all for coming in and appreciate what you're doing on this serious topic for the city. This one's probably for you, Dr. Jim. We talk about the combined effect, and I think you talked about the peaks, and we seem to have the peaks under control, but it's this, so many different activities there doing their own little bit to make a bigger problem. Can you sort of explain how you think we might be able to solve that? Because I think if you look at an individual business, it's probably operating within its statutory requirements, but you add them all together and then there's probably the problem you're discussing.
Yeah, thanks. Look, I think the request from the Environment Court to have a plan to look at the cumulative and iterative improvements, which then isn't just about one business or one residential street, it's about the whole area. I think that's actually quite new. I think that's actually quite a new concept. But the plan that they have asked for, that the Regional Council is leading on, which is how collectively we do that, I think that's actually going to be key to this. In terms of the cumulative issue, that's mainly been talking about PM10s. Pollution is actually quite complicated. So in some ways, the simplest thing is to talk about the particulates, but there's other things, sulfur dioxides, nitrous oxides, and they need different solutions. So there does need to be a more nuanced look at this, but if we stick to the particulates, I think, as we've heard, there's quite a lot of the building blocks for interventions that have been put in place. We've got a toughened air plan. A lot of the industries which were part of the issue initially now have to have resource consents quite soon, and they're going through a process. There's something just recently come out around sealing the open yards because of the dust that's caused from those. There's a whole load of things that are now being put in place, but they haven't been put in place for very long. So I think we really need to look at what's going to be the impact of all of these initiatives over the next 2 or 3 years, particularly on that average, the average dust and the fine respirable dusts in the atmosphere, because that's what all of this has been building to. And I think, as I said, we're not really there yet. There has been some small changes in those average backgrounds, particularly around Whararo Marae and the Marina area. I think that's as much to do with which way the wind blows. They are kind of upwind of the industrial area rather than downwind. So I think we need to be really keeping a very close eye on those averages to see what the cumulative impact has. And I think this iterative plan that's been proposed, I think we all need to take that very seriously. Yeah.
This one's also for you. We've discussed sticking to our knitting, I suppose. This group was sort of set up to worry about air quality control. There has been discussion in recent meetings where we've talked about other environmental things that we could be working on, and I know you have an opinion on that. Would you like to expand on that, please?
I think the key reason for setting up the Air Quality Working Group and for some of the things that have been put in place from Environment Court decisions and resource consent decisions have really been focused on air quality and on the known health impacts of air quality. I think it's really important to have a forum for looking at the other environmental issues in this complex area, but I really don't think we want to lose focus on the importance of air quality, given its very clear demonstrated link to health. So speaking as a public health physician, I'm very clear that it'd be great to have other maybe subcommittees that are looking at things like stormwater and other, because they are interrelated. but we really need to not take our eye off the air quality ball, particularly now, because I think we're actually at the point where a lot of the interventions are now being put in place. We've heard of the improvements around industry, but some of them haven't really bitten yet. You know, they haven't sealed the yards yet. You know, that would be one example. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. And then Jackie.
Hi, tēnā koutou, mihi ana tautoko ananga mihi ko whāriki here. Thank you all for your presentation in kōrero this morning. Probably a question for the table and staff perhaps. I believe that we've already kind of submitted on some of the RMA reforms, etc. But I am curious to know if we have conducted an exercise with you guys around some of those key lessons, because I think your question, Joel, at the end there is a very valid one, and an important one to ask, and for us to consider, considering the trajectory of this current government's approach to things. But have we kind of conducted that lessons learnt exercise with you fellas or staff? And if not, how prepared, is that something that you guys would be prepared to do?
I wrote to the Regional Council and City Council probably a year or so ago now, because I had some, let's call them vague concerns, given that we were now starting to populate the other industrial areas. And I just wanted to kind of make sure that we were careful we didn't make the same mistakes in the planning and the spatial planning of those new areas that perhaps had been made years ago in Mount Maunganui. There was one meeting, people from the City Council and Western Bay Regional Council did come along and have an informal chat with us. But nothing's really progressed from that. So yes, the willingness was definitely there, but not something I think that's been pursued since.
I'd just like to make one comment on that. Recently at a regional council policy amendment, a long-term plan amendment discussion, one of the councillors asked if I was aware of smart growth, because they're looking to build, 5, 10, 15,000 new houses out around Rangiuru. And I'm like, well, that's not very smart growth, is it? If you're going to just do the same thing again. One of the key points to making this whole thing work, that industry have told us, Lauta, Balance, they've all come to the table and said, we need somewhere to go. If we don't have to stay here, if we can't stay here, we need somewhere to go. And it was tabled at the meeting that Rangiuru was a viable option for them. We've got to keep working on the transport corridors and all of that. But without that place where they can go, the whole thing can fall apart. So it's not, we need to learn these lessons, and smart growth is not smart if you're going to build more houses around a new industrial area. And it's not an excuse to not do it properly. So we have to keep living what we're living. So that was my 2 cents on that.
I guess the short answer is no, but the long answer is that we've engaged to support Regional Council with Plan Change 13, Policy 12, and the development of that, and even supported them in the Environment Court. But in terms of what you're asking for, into the development of policies or submission to central government, no.
Thank you. Just a tangata whenua, Representative Rolleston Steed, and then Councillor Crowther.
Kia ora. Thank you very much it was good listening to you and hearing your update regarding this item, and just thinking about, particularly Whareroa Marae. When I think about the Mount Maunganui Industrial Airshed, I always think that that's probably the most pivotal example of reverse sensitivity that we could probably use in Tauranga Moana when it comes to, some of those issues that are impacting on that hapori that's been there for many, many, many years, longer than the industrial area of the Mount Maunganui. Jim, you mentioned that this one is, while it's particularly talking about PM10, because the Airshed program focuses on that as a regulated pollutant, you also mentioned PM 2.5. Is that an issue? Is that sort of measuring okay or not?
I don't think there's as extensive a network of measuring 2.5. PM10 is the 10 microns. PM 2.5 is obviously much smaller, and it can get further down into the lungs and can actually get across the lungs into the bloodstream. So there is concern that it has an even greater impact on health in general, and will inevitably become a more of a focus in the requirements for air quality. I think it's to be fair to say that the current standards that we're operating to that have raised the spectre of the polluted airshed, I mean, those are very much a minimum standard. They're definitely not something you should be aiming at. That's a bit of an alarm bell if you actually get to 50 anytime. So it makes you look at is that a one-off, but in this instance, it's on the background of a generally high but higher pollution, and 2.5 is part of that mix of particulates. Depends on from area to area. But the 2.5 one's particularly a feature of things like transport emissions and home solid fuel heating, whereas the PM10 I think is more of an issue in the industrial area here. So each airshed has its different values, but yes, those other aspects do need to be part of this wider plan. The focus is on, I think, the area not being a polluted airshed, but as I say, that's actually not a very hard bar to be reaching, because you have to get quite polluted to trigger those minimum guarantees.
So just on that, just one more supplementary, if that's okay, probably directed more to the port, because my understanding is PM 2.5 is more of a diesel combustion, is probably the main source for PM 2.5. So is there any thinking or mitigation that the Port of Tauranga are thinking, particularly when they're looking at expanding their area, their footprint, with the extension of the wharf, which will essentially, potentially, increase that PM 2.5. Is there any mitigation around what that looks like?
I suppose going back just a step, so there is PM 2.5 monitoring installed by the Regional Council across the industrial area. It isn't as extensive as the PM10 monitoring, and the data set doesn't go back as far, but I'm aware of at least 3 monitors. What those monitors are showing is that the PM10 annual concentration sits generally at slightly below or slightly above the WHO guidelines currently. New Zealand hasn't adopted any guidelines, I don't believe, but if we use the WHO guidelines in absence, that's roughly where it sits. In terms of the port's developments, we have assessed potential air quality effects associated to new wharves, and we've assessed PM 2.5 as one of those contaminants, and we've identified that there won't be any significant change or additional burden on PM 2.5 from that. But it is tricky. Just because there's going to be more wharves doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be an increase in PM 2.5. If we look at the Sulphur Point side, for example, the reason that there is a need to extend there is so we can have larger vessels come in. Generally, larger vessels and newer vessels have cleaner burning engines. It might be that you have the same number of vessels, but you're able to move more cargo because of the size. It might mean more vessels, but it also might not, so there's not a clear connection between those 2 points. That said, we have undertaken those assessments on potential air impacts associated to the development.
I'll just lean in on that, and I think I spoke about it, or I did speak about it before, in terms of every consent or every activity has its merit, and I guess the warriors continuing to look at them all in isolation, and which is I guess the status quo and what has got us into this mess. So it's people like to say it's really complex. I actually don't think it is. There are some complexities to looking at things in I guess, cumulatively. But if we don't do that, then there won't be change. If we continue to keep on looking at things in isolation and on the individual merit as opposed to collectively within the Mount Maunganui airshed, there won't be the change that this city deserves.
Thank you all. Another question for you, Jim. I'm just thinking in terms of our strategy, and it sort of follows on from Jackie's question, is do we risk, if you like, deindustrialising that area, but ending up with major problems from having still got a port and car and truck orientated transport through there? In other words, which is our best strategy, to get rid of the industry, which is reducing its emissions significantly, or to actually invest in a more sustainable transport system around that area?
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, I think that, you know, my kind of, to some extent, my role is pointing out the magnitude of the problem, and I think that we are. I think it'd be worth just checking where we're at with the average air quality, because when I looked on the LAWA website yesterday, we're probably bouncing around the New Zealand health guideline level, not the WHO one, and which is the New Zealand guideline level is 20 micrograms per cubic metre and WHO's 15, which is where I'd like us to go, because I think it's also worth stressing that as far as particulates are concerned, there actually is no safe level. When we compared the health impacts between Otomotai and Mount Maunganui and talked about the excess, that was against a baseline of, even in Otomotai, air pollution causes ill health. So, you know, it's more a case of what level do we get to that we all find an acceptable balance between, you know, the pollution that everyday life has to cause in our current setup, and what we're willing to kind of accept in terms of the health trade-offs. And clearly, I think what we're saying is Mount Maunganui, probably too much. Other parts of Tauranga, maybe okay for now, but it might be an idea to look at those as well at some point in the future. But it's all going to be a balance, and I think that this collective planning has probably got to be the way forward. So, I mean, there are complexities in balancing those things, and I don't have the answer, but I want to make sure that people are involved in the groups that are consulting on it, and the regional council does need to involve us in that, and hopefully we will be.
Thank you very much for that. We'll just finish off now with Councillor Schooler, and then we'll invite you to stay afterwards for the paper which is coming up soon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your time, not just today, but since 2019. And so a number of you, I think all of you, talked about planning and learning from our mistakes from the past, and whether our smart growth plan is that smart, and robust engagement in planning. So 2 questions. The first one, how much has the Mount Air Quality Group or your own entities been involved in the initial conversations about the new regional spatial plan?
We were involved. It was there were a series of workshops, and there were also there was public consultation. But we do feel that we could really hone in on it a bit more. Like, it was very broad, and then we kind of got presented with what the spatial plan was without really understand. Like, here's the buffer zone. And that, and then this is all industry, and so we feel a little bit like that's not what we had wanted to happen.
And so the one that's now being proposed when the new planning legislation comes out, have you been involved recently?
No.
Okay. So the second question, and it's something that really worries me because we have it reported to us at Smart Growth by the Regional Council, and I keep saying, when are we going to involve us and the community? And the answer is we apparently are doing a no regrets early planning. But if we haven't understood the lessons we need to learn from, or started thinking about how early engagement and robust engagement about what it looks like, then it makes me really concerned that we are not, therefore, we're not really listening to ourselves. So I'm going to propose some actions probably after the paper, Chair, just in regard involving not only the Mount Air Quality Group but the community in the early stages of planning, because as you say, Emma, we also quite often get presented with something, almost a finished product, tell us what's wrong, whereas from what I'm hearing and what I believe, right now we should be saying what might this look like and why, and does this fix some of the issues we've already got on the table?
And it'd just be worth checking, like, I think a lot of public engagement was held like online and some like just general public engagement. However, you know, I feel our forum, I'm just going into that for the Working Party, would be a great place to really hone in on some of the stuff that has come out. So.
And the engagement, for example, you did at Mount Intermediate a year or so ago was phenomenal, right? It gets the community there. They're already, they are engaged because you have made sure that's happening. Okay, thank you very much.
Because we kind of want to move fast now. Like, we don't want to miss this opportunity. Like, if we put it out to, it can just go, we'll miss this window to get something really good in place in terms of the spatial plan.
And I think that's why we need actions in place, because even we get told, oh, don't worry about it yet because the legislation hasn't come in, but this is the time we need to be consulting and sharing and figuring out what best looks like.
Now is the time.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the questions. Like I said, really appreciate your time, busy people. Oh, I've sort of, okay, make it quick.
Earlier in the kōrero, heard government MIA not turning up to the hui. Any reason why? Is it not? Do you have a view on why they're not turning up? Because I think it's important to understand why.
There was a period of time where MFE were attending the meeting. I believe that staff member left, and I'm unclear why there wasn't a substitute put in.
There was a strong push from everybody, all corners of the Equality Working Party to, I guess, put an expectation to central government that there would be representative, I guess particularly from MFE. We went so far as to say that obviously we've got Dr. Jim Miller, but representatives from Ministry of Health as well. But unfortunately, that fell on deaf ears. Now with that, obviously some support from City Council, from this team of councillors, like I talked about being brave and being leaders for the city, taking the keys back to the city. And putting an expectation to central government and the Ministry for the Environment, while we have them, that there is an expectation that they return to the table.
And what about any local local MPs? They're staying away. They're good at getting on social media and talking about council business, but they are not taking it, given the significance of that. You're not hearing from them at all?
From the outset, there's been representatives, elected members from TCC and Bay Plenty Regional Council, and I commend both. I guess both city and regional council for that, and thank you for your continued representation. But you're correct. It's really disappointing that we have people that are elected members to represent on a national scale, I guess, this city and the impacts on this council and people that call Tauranga Moana home. But for whatever reason, they see to date, they have not seen interest to be able to entertain participating in these extremely important conversations.
That's good. Good question, Councillor Olliston. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for your time. We'll be getting to that paper first up after in a few minutes' time. So just moving now on to late items, there are none. Item 4 on our agenda, confidential business to be transferred into the item number 5, there is none. And there's no change to the order of business, item 6. So that brings us to item 7, which is confirmation of minutes of the City Delivery Committee meeting held on the 28th of April 2026. I just ask if there are any corrections to the minutes. There being none, I call for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Schooler moved. Councillor Taylor second. The recommendation that the minutes of the City Delivery Committee held 28th of April 2026 be confirmed as a true and correct record. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of conflicts of interest. I may have one at 1 o'clock if we're still in this meeting and the soccer starts, but other than that, hopefully none. So we move into item number 9, business, and the first paper is the Mount Maunganui Air Quality Working Party update on progress. Thanks, Erin, and also welcome Reserving and to the table as well, and Carl. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Reserving is a senior regulatory project officer at the Regional Council and has been involved in working with Mount industrial areas for a very long time. I do want to just acknowledge the speakers this morning who have all spent considerable time and focus on air quality issues in the Mount industrial area and wider Mount area. To improve air quality outcomes for the community, and in particular for Joel, for Emma and for Heidi. This has been entirely voluntary. They have worked sometimes full-time in an education and an advocacy role, and they have also participated in a lot of planning and consenting processes and have become RMA experts. Reluctant experts. It's taken a really significant toll on them. The Mount Air Quality Working Party was established in 2020 to support a coordinated action for improving air quality in the area. Following the most recent hui, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Taylor wanted this information brought to committee just for your information and oversight, particularly what is it? Why was it established? Who's involved? What's been done and what continues to be done? So we have provided that overview and are really open for questions. I wanted to emphasise 3 points though. The first is air quality using both the PM10 measure but other measures that the Regional Council reports on a regular basis has shown improvements. It has been improving since those peak exceedances in 2019, which was kind of the catalyst for bringing the Air Quality Working Party together, and when the airshed was classified as polluted. The second point is that progress has been driven, as you can see, by really strong collaboration, a highly engaged community, a committed industry, and particular individuals that, like those you've heard from this morning. And the final point, and you heard that loud and clear, is that Whareroa and the community are still really concerned about cumulative impacts on their health and on the environment as well. So continued monitoring, continued regulation and industry changes are really needed to help support long-term outcomes. And to Joel's point, which is a really important one, is that what do we learn from planning from the past so we don't repeat these situations in the future. And I'll just really quickly touch on that point that you raised, the question you asked around the government involvement and local MP involvement. The terms of reference never provided for local MP attendance at the working party, so they haven't been invited. So that's just in their defence, that's why they haven't been at the table. In terms of government involvement and central agency involvement, NZTA have come in and out talking about projects like connecting Mount Maunganui at times that are important to the conversation. And MFE had been involved at the beginning and intermittently through the process, but MFE through changes no longer exist. And at the time when staff no longer engaged, their whole air quality expertise team were disestablished. So that's why they haven't been at the table. But otherwise, over questions on that paper.
Thank you, staff. And yeah, Councillor Rolleston and then Councillor Crowther.
Kia ora and thank you for the paper. It's very helpful to get some more background on this very important kaupapa. So just picking up what Joel said around learning from the past, two big projects come straight to my mind around there, connecting Mount Maunganui and the dredging of for the Port of Tauranga to allow bigger ships in. I guess I'm looking for some comment. I know obviously the port's going through its own process, but hearing from Dr. Jim about the impact of traffic onto the pollution, how do we make sure that we are taking on the message that Joel's given? I know we can't undo he's clear we can't undo the past, but we can definitely influence the future. You know, or is the horse bolted that it's like, well, I don't think it's bolted, but, you know, obviously whareroa have a view that they want things how they want them, which is a massive challenge, but I'm looking for any comment you might be able to bring in terms of how much consideration is given to learning from that when other big kaupapa are coming to the table.
Projects that are all underway happen within the context of the improvements that the community want to see in that area. But in terms of planning for the future, which is learning from our past mistakes, I think the critical thing for Tauranga City Council at this stage, and it will be regardless of where local government lands, is our land use planning and zoning. So that is making sure land is used in the right way in the right place. The Mount Spatial Plan started a whole conversation and a lot of work around that. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that, Carl, in terms of particularly around zoning and land use planning, where that's sitting at the moment.
Yep, sure. So look, this has been a journey that I guess council staff have been involved in for some time now, in terms of looking, you know, working through the Mount Spatial Plan, and so that started around 2022. It was quickly identified that the environmental issues associated with land use in the Mount area were a critical part of that, and that became a key part of the kaupapa for that project. And I think, you know, it's fair to say, you know, we learned a lot through that process. You become up to speed in terms of really understanding what the key issues are, and, you know, everyone who sits around the table would say, if we were to replan this today, it wouldn't look the same. So you take those lessons, and you know, we've stepped through, decisions have been made, and certainly the focus was that there was a Plan Change 38 under the current RMA that was starting to be worked through, and that was going to look specifically at the land use for the Mount industrial area as well as the wider area, and work through that corridor with key stakeholders. So I think to Heidi's point, you know, that involvement with key stakeholders and looking at, you know, what the future looks like with Whareroa and others. Plan changes are now on hold, so we are moving into the new system, and through that regional spatial planning and a new land use plan, this will be a key topic. The planning bill, as it is written, talks specifically to needing to address incompatible activities as we move through this. So I guess the short answer is it is top of mind. We are really aware of the lessons that we've learned through this, and we will be looking at it closely as we move forward through the new planning system.
Sorry, Councillor Crowther and then Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, and good to see you again, Reece. I've got a question in terms of the annual averages to Dr. Miller's point. They seem to be under the WHO guidelines now for Whareroa, which is good to see, but still exceeding for PM 2.5 and PM 10 for Ranch and Rata. Is that just a matter of wind direction? It's easy to kind of get a lower reading by Whareroa because of the prevailing winds for some reason, or is there something that you've done differently, or that has happened near Whareroa?
Thank you, Councillor Crowther. There's probably a number of influences, and wind direction would be one of them, but I think we also see the reduction in industrial activity that has occurred, particularly with the balance, the closing down of manufacturing has had a large impact on that particular site there as well. Just a general lowering of dust producing activity due to what's come about through Plan Change 13, the Regional Council's air plan, the impact that we've had through the interim permitted activity rule on the transportation and storage of bulk solid materials, that type of thing. So I think they have all contributed. Ranch Road, that is the air quality monitor in the residential area. One thing that has come out about every breach that we have detected there, we've got an exceptional circumstance dispensation from Ministry, which means that we have been able to show that they are all predominantly caused by natural circumstances or the heavily laden sea salt air that affects that location. So we haven't had a confirmed breach from industrial sources at Ranch Road.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
With a bit of indulgence, Chair, I've got one comment and then three small questions.
Nice sharp comment, I assume.
My first couple go to Reece. So my first comment is, can we invite the MPs, please? I think it would be good to have them there. And I'm including Jan and that, Jan Tinetti, if we can make sure she's invited as well. My second one is around the P1's industrial accord that they've been conducting over the last couple of years. Appears to be quite successful. My question really is there anybody that's been a holdout on actually joining in and helping with this problem? Just to be specific, not to put you on the spot, you don't have to name them. It just could be good to know whether there's been 100% uptake or whether we haven't got there yet.
There is probably always going to be some businesses, but generally I think through the reconsenting of most of the industry that has occurred and the changes that we put on to address cumulative effects of discharges, all of the big industries have been captured so far. With what Priority 1 has undertaken with the Mount Environmental Accord, there is a whole lot that have voluntarily joined into that. So I think you could look across the operators in the Mount now and just say the awareness amongst business for best practice in the way their industry operates is far greater than it was 5 years ago. The amount of investment that business realises is required to meet the requirements and what the community's expectations are has really evolved as well. So I think with what the Air Quality Working Party has done, and particularly what Priority 1 has done to raise this awareness, has been very effective. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that as a nearly 100%, but okay, didn't quite get there. My other two questions come to staff. There's been a big push through the working group to get the yard sealed over there to reduce the dust, and the consequence of that may be that the stormwater hasn't got somewhere to soak away to. Are we confident that our stormwater systems can cope with this extra sealed yards that are happening in the area?
putting impervious solutions in to an area that is prone to flooding is problematic, and it's a balance of managing risks. So we need to reduce dust in the area, but we need to be mindful of the Mount Industrial area being flood prone. So there is the potential that the more yards that are sealed, the higher risks might be when we have significant rain events. But we haven't done the modelling on what that means. And the area of unsealed yards is not significant. It needs to happen, but we haven't kind of put all of that into our modelling yet to really understand what the implications might be. But it's the balance of risks, isn't it? Reducing dust, making sure we don't make flooding worse.
Yeah, I guess I'm just pointing out, you're solving one problem, are you causing another, sort of this question. And then my last one sort of comes back to what Joel was saying about learning from the past. I know a couple of the industries are moving from the Mount to Tauriko. Do we monitor Tauriko, and are we just moving the problem from one part of our city to another?
I could probably answer that, Councillor Taylor. Yes, the monitoring regime that we have at the Regional Council is region-wide, and obviously there's a annual plan budget for that and a set number of monitors that are covered with that budget. And at the moment, we are looking at a redeployment of some of those monitors. So there are some monitors that were in the Mount residential area for the last 3 years that have been in areas which have shown we haven't detected any issues, and we are now looking for redeployment into Tauriko of those. So Regional Council is working with Tauranga City Council right at the moment to establish the best locations to put those in the Tauriko Industrial Estate.
And if I could, just follow up on that as well. The consents of the past, Regional Council's air discharge consents of the past are very different than what the consents of the future are and the now. And we have to be confident that limits and discharges that are consented are safer than they were historically. What I would emphasise too, though, is for those ward councillors responsible for Tauriko, when there is a lot of community conversation about what activities should happen in a designated industrial zone, that's where consents and consent processes can take time and be really tricky, because it's really important that activities zoned for industrial areas stay in industrial areas, and activities that aren't don't go into industrial areas.
Great point. I'm just looking at the look of horror on Dr. Jim's face when you said you're going to move one of the monitors, so might have to check with him. Yeah, a new one would be great. Yeah, really good answer there. I do have concerns that we need to look at the cumulative effect in Tauriko as well. Like, again, they might all be underneath the limits and they might have all the new tech, but if we put them all in one place, what happens?
Kia ora. This probably just dovetails off Councillor Taylor's question around that too, because there is a lot happening. We were talking about spatial planning, Mount Maunganui spatial planning, we're looking at regional spatial planning, but also Te Puna. Te Puna, they're undergoing a spatial plan at the moment as well, and essentially they're looking at relocating some of those activities from the Mount to Te Puna, like the container company. So, I guess the conversation begs, how do we get that holistic planning overview of all of these things that are happening? So like you say, you're not shifting one problem to another, and while they're happening right now is probably the best time to have the conversation. Also want to acknowledge Reece. It's been a minute since we were working together, so thank you. It's lovely seeing you.
I think we just need to say regional spatial plan.
Yeah, or amalgamation, I don't know, either or. Oh, any further questions of staff? No? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So now I will move to, can I just have a mover and a seconder to receive? Councillor Taylor, move. Councillor Schooler, second. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't normally talk as much as I have this morning, but this subject, probably when we were getting elected, I think I went to a meeting at the Mount and I heard Dr. Miller talking about the number of excessive deaths that we had in Mount Airshed because of this pollution, estimated at 13 people, 13 extra deaths, as opposed to, say, Otamotai in the comparative. So yeah, this group is very, very important, and I think are doing a great job. So congratulations to everybody that's actually doing the work on this working group. But I take Joel's point as well. We need to start thinking, what have we learned from this and where are we going? And I do have concerns. We've got this big industrial area out at Tauriko, a lot of things happening there. We need to consider what the cumulative effect is on the airshed out there, and it's not just the airshed. We look at waterways. I think that's also come up this morning. And then I also would take the point that we need to bring the politicians in that are central government politicians. It's all very well looking at our own little thing, but some of the stuff that's happening here is around the bigger economic activity that happens in our port area. So lots of things collide in this space, and I think there's some great work going on, but still a lot to do.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Does Deputy Mayor wish to speak now, or I'll wait? Because I know you do have some actions to bring, but do you want to speak now or wait till others have spoken?
I'll wait.
Okay. Councillor Roseboom.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, as the member for the Tauriko ward, and I'm enjoying all the growth in my ward and the industry and the jobs that have been created there. We've been predominantly discussing the Mount this morning and the Port of Tauranga. And the Port of Tauranga has the function of export-import growth. It provides a mechanism by which we, New Zealand, and by our region, engage and enact with the rest of the world. It is our gateway. And tons and tons of freight come and go from that port. It's been doing it since 1914, when approximately 20,000 tonnes of freight left and entered back into the Port of Tauranga, to where we are today, where it's over 24 million tonnes. We are a growth region. All the businesses that have attached themselves to the port in order to grow are reliant on the products that come in through that port that help grow and support our economic growth of the region. All those businesses at the time that they set up there did so within the rules and regulations of the day. And I accept that these rules will change, but quite often retrofitting new technology onto old plants can be expensive, if not limiting. So it takes time for them to get there. And be aware that these are potentially your family's jobs that we've been discussing here today. The kids of us who are working with jobs related to the port and what the port does and how industry grows here. And there've been changes given, especially to the log industry, around treatment of logs and what gets done at the port and before they get put on ships. The same thing is at Southport in Southland. These cause issues, yes. Are there mitigations available? Yes. Can we put them in? That's up to the business to do, and who actually pays for that. So we need to be very careful. Changing rules and putting imposition onto businesses may lead or could lead to those businesses leaving, and they'll take all those jobs with them. So we need to step very carefully how we change rules. The port's been there a long time. The residential Mount hasn't been there as long as the port has been there. I'll assume that everyone that moved to the Mount since 1914 have known the port's there. So just be very careful what we do and how we amend and change rules. But support business growth, support the development of our region. Reading the ASB business report this morning, we're back on top as a region, fastest growing business region in the country. I'd like us to stay there and continue to grow.
Thank you, Councillor Roby. It is an interesting point. Yeah, two largely incompatible, I suppose, uses right beside each other, but there is that history and there's some longer history as well. I think what I took out of this report is, the air quality, the bottom line, it's getting better. Collaboration is stronger, and even around the working group table, you see some pretty obviously divergent views, and they've been able to keep at the table and have some free and frank discussions to get us where we've got to. And the impacts of the port are meaningful on the nearby community, so we have to acknowledge both sides of that coin. So yeah, I certainly do. This paper is very topical for all of us. Councillor Taylor, I think your comments were very good. It'll be great to see central government, us being part of a regional deal and wanting more growth in this area. How do we make sure that we do the right thing, but it's also backed up? Any other people would like to speak? Councillor Crowther?
Yeah, this has been a bit of a passion of mine for the last decade, and I'd just like to acknowledge the work from everybody who's been involved in this. I remember attending methyl bromide meetings with Aubrey, Michael, Nicole, Kate, Des, and a whole bunch of other people who, for years, we were just getting nowhere. They were getting nowhere. I was a minor bit player, but they just tirelessly kept pushing that methyl bromide issue. And in a way, what we're dealing with today has got one less major issue to deal with because of action that's come from Tauranga being one of the biggest consumers of methyl bromide in the world at the Port of Tauranga. And the action that's happened, the lobbying of central government that happened, finally the EPA, after unbelievable resistance, in my view, against the evidence, finally the EPA sort of seemed to succumb a little bit. And the port did a lot of good work as well in that area. So I think there's progress in that, and there's definitely progress in this other stuff. I think the danger, and it's easy to sort of benchmark in different ways. So I'm thinking of when I remember being in Pune in India and seeing that the limit had crossed from 247 across the 250 level, and thinking this was a really polluted day because it was 250 something on the reading. Now what we're talking about at the Mount is for PM10 we're talking, the WHO are saying annual averages of 15, so the numbers are a bit lower, but it's still a real issue. And I do want to point out that in Utamotai we're still in double figures. So meaning, for instance, Whareroa 12.9, Utamotai 10.7, I think it was. So it's not like there's only a problem in Tauranga in this one airshed. That is a real problem airshed, and it's something we need to really keep a close eye on and actually do something about. But I would say the other issue is that in the background are potentially dangerously high levels, as Jim has said, of these particulates and other things, nitrous dioxide, etc., nitrogen dioxide, NO2 anyway, that these things are impacting people's health and well-being right across the city, and transport is a really big factor there, as I think Jackie mentioned earlier. So unless we have a more sustainable transport system and deal with industry, then we're still going to have problems. But well done to all the efforts so far.
Councillor Baker, and then Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā tātou. Also want to acknowledge all the work that's gone in to date from our representatives of the community and industry, staff, elected members, and I guess everyone else in between. Good report. I wasn't actually going to say anything, but I was kind of a bit prompted to by some of the comments one of my dear colleagues, Martin, you had said. I agree that your words of caution are probably fair, and that there is considerations to the moving of industry out and what that may mean for families. But if the Port of Tauranga is the gateway, it's only so because the environment enables it to be so. And regardless if we're a regional council or not, or we become a unitary or not, one day, from the mountain to the sea, from the seabed to the sky above, we have a responsibility to ensure the well-being of the environment and those that live within it. One of my tipuna tāpira ngata once said, hea te mea nui o tēnei ao, he tangata, What that doesn't translate to is what is the most important thing in this world. It is industry, industry, industry. It's what is the most important thing in this world. It is people, people, people. And if we centre our decisions around oranga taiao, oranga tangata, healthy environment, thriving communities, then that'll put our people, employment, health, education, etc., in a far better place than they are now. So I welcome what comes, and I know that there are some actions that will come up a bit earlier on, but I am supportive of kind of the direction that the group is taking, and invite us to be a lot more bold and ambitious in what we put forward into the future to ensure that our tamariki and our mokopuna continue to have an amazing city and environment to live, work and play in.
Councillor Baker, before I ask the Deputy Mayor to come a second, yes, so we have Councillor Rolleston and then Tangata Whenua Representative Rolleston Steed.
Thank you, Chair. First, to those of the working group that are still here or listening online, thanks so much for your mahi that you do, real puku mahi that you do on behalf of the environment. So I acknowledge. Look, for somebody that spends a lot of time at Wharero, I've grown up around Wharero. I actually worked right next door for 10 years. And so I have an affinity with those people there. And this is all about balance. Seeming that I just heard a word over there. It's all about balance, trying to find the solution. But when I'm seeing the health and the impact on my kaumātua, if we take Councillor Roseboom's around, we might scare industry away. Well, if it does mean that to save our people's lives, then so be it. But I think there's a balance in here that the port's there. Yes, the port's been there for a really long time. Wharero has been there for a lot longer. And yes, some of the decisions that were made were not ours. And we can't undo those, we can't reverse those, but we definitely can play a role to find solutions that at the end of the day, they may be good for some and not for others. And how do we find that balance when we go on this journey? While today's all about this particular kaupapa, Mount Air Quality, Wharero, when you talk cumulative, are not only getting cumulative from pollution, they're getting cumulative from everything. And I know this council is working hard to find solutions, and so I really want to acknowledge the group. I think we need more, horsepower. I was a little bit concerned, I think, in the report that it's saying we'll only meet twice a year. My view was it would have been better to be meeting more, but I realise, this is hard work and this is a small group of people doing a lot of mahi. But I do really want to mihi to Joel and to Wharero because, they're doing hard yaka, and for somebody that sees that and feels that, we've got to find balanced solutions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just to our Air Quality Working Group, I hope you recognise that this has obviously probably been one of the most relentless conversations that we may have had on a certain kaupapa, well, for myself personally anyway. And I just want to sort of back up a little bit what Councillor Roseboom did say. I definitely agree that the economy and employment is critical. They're critical factors, and I think it's important that we recognise that. I guess also thinking around exactly what Councillor Rolleston said, and also Councillor Baker, is what is the offset for that? Where are we compromising the environment and our people? So I guess I'll probably just leave it with ensuring that our industries are more compliant. We had an example where we went to ACON last week, and they set a sterling example on sustainability with asphalt. So if they can do it, why can't our other industry players do it? So I think with regard to employment, I would say it's critical that we make our industry players more compliant.
Thank you. Now, seconder.
Thank you, Chair. And I think great comments around the table mostly. And yeah, again, thank you to the working group. Just on the comment that, if we live in the mountain, we should be aware of the air quality, and I as I biked past Whararoa this morning coming to work and trying to do my bit for the city, I didn't acknowledge when I boarded the Mount and lived at the Mount that I might be impacting my health negatively by actually being in the open air. So I think we really need to be careful about what we assume happens. And as a council, we're also not going to say, hey, don't live at the Mount because there's all these issues. We need to say, well, how can we actually start fixing them? And that's what the work that's being done by the Mount Air Quality Working Group is starting to do. And again, Rod was the one that actually said, hey, we need to bring this to the table because this is a much bigger, this is a decision absolutely about what the Mount Air Quality Group is telling us, but it's wider. And it says, what are we doing in our whole city? We don't want to move a problem from A to B. We don't want to say, we haven't questioned whether smart growth is smart enough, to Emma's comment. We haven't been involved, we're not involved yet in the regional spatial plan, which is a no regrets planning at the moment, but it's not coming to us. And it needs to come to us and to you and to the community. And I think that's something that we really need to say, what are those issues from the past that we need to address? What are the things we're hearing from our community when we're looking at our city and maybe a new environment, that it's a new local government that we're looking at? How are we taking all of that into account? And I just don't think we are early enough to make sure that we can have impact on future plans. So I've got 3 either actions that I would like to add, or if I had the movers' acceptance to either put those into the resolution, that those are, so I'll just leave those up there. And I'm very happy if we rewording them, but we could just have that, they could also be in the resolution. So we want a lessons learned paper because we haven't got that. We want early engagement on the regional spatial plan, which, to use Dr. Jim's words, enables robust engagement in that plan, and that I want to know what's happening with the written plan that is answering the questions from the Environment Court. And even that, if that's coming from the Regional Council, we obviously, well, we assume we are part of that.
Yeah, I won't give a steer, mover.
Probably happy that they're actions, Jen. I think we'll get them dealt with.
I'm happy with that too. Actions actually have an action schedule and we don't have a resolution schedule yet, so they might get faster work.
For another day. All right. So now that, just Councillor Taylor as the mover, would you like to, you happy? Okay, so now I put the following motion to be voted on. The recommendation is that the City Delivery Committee receives the report Mount Maunganui Air Quality Working Paper update on progress. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? That is carried. Thank you. Well, for a recommendation-only paper, that was a quite substantial discussion, but clearly important topic for everyone. We now move to item 9.2, public place recycling bins, delivery update, outcomes and next steps, and a welcome, is it Kim and Paula? No, Sarah.
Morena, Chair, elected members, and Jackie, good to see you. Thank you for your time. Ours is just really a good news story that we're bringing back to Council post a decision that was made early in the year. As part of the 25-26 annual plan deliberations, Council resolved to reduce the number of public recycling bin stations, converting some locations to general waste bins. And to accompany this was a piece of education around that as well. So the decision responded to high servicing costs and persistently high contamination in public place mixed recycling, which meant our materials placed in recycling bins was generally unable to be recycled. So the team will take the report as read. I'll hand over to to Kim, who led this project. She is our team leader of waste minimisation and engagement. Thanks, Kim.
Morena Chair, kia ora elected members and Jackie. So this is really an example of taking an issue where there's a problem and looking at it quite openly and coming up with a system tweak, which was a change to what we were doing, rather than just hitting it head on with education. So what we did was make a change to move the mixed public place recycling bins, which were continually contaminated and is a global issue that people struggle to solve, and we moved to change it to cans only. And we adopted a wait and see. We thought we'd see how people responded to the change, were they able to use the bins, and the results are in the report. 32,500 cans recycled over the summer, able to be accepted from our recyclers direct without having to go through the sorting facility, which has a really high value in the recycling market. So it's a great story. We will do some education and reinforcing education when we get to summer again, but possibly what you might like is that other councils are taking note of this as well. So Whakatane have just told me this morning they are shifting all their public place recycling bins to cans only as well. So yeah, happy to take any questions.
Yeah, it's great. It is great to get a good news story. Any questions of staff? Councillor Baker and then Councillor, what's your name again? Crowther.
Tēnā kōrua. Yeah, cool report and really cool approach. Can you just remind me, because I remember that we made the decision, but I can't recall if the paper that was presented to us was offering something different and we voted. Did we vote to what was recommended, or did we push against staff recommendation? And I'm not trying to point out this is not an I told you so moment by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just wanting to know, with kind of an edgier approach, with a cool outcome, could we apply the same principle to other things? And if so, where? But I just can't remember if this was how we got to that point.
Yeah, so I wasn't here, Hope was, so she might like to speak, but what I did watch your debate, and I think what was proposed was, hey, this whole system is really expensive. We've got 55 units in the city. Those triple bin stations are considerably more expensive to service than the single bins. And we're probably over capacity. A lot of bins have been added to the network above and beyond what was in place. So it started with 24, had gone up to 55. So I think what was proposed was to remove those stations to cut costs and then do some education to teach people how to recycle in public place appropriately. So I think my nature is to say, well, what is the most simple thing to do here? How can we actually solve this problem? Because I felt that doing education out front would continually give us the same bad outcome. So by making a change, following it with education, I felt that could be a more successful approach, and it has played off in this regard, but sometimes education can work first. It just depends on what's appropriate for the problem.
Councillor Crowther, sorry, remember your name?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Just wondering, I'm sort of doing my best to channel the Mayor while he's not in the room, that the cost per bin, $322, having operated in non-profit sector and kind of stuck things on things very cheaply, I'm just interested in sort of, like, how on earth could we get to that level? It just seems beyond belief, even factoring in staff time if we did. And so that's the question, did we factor in staff time? Where are these costs coming from to do that?
I just invite Hope up to speak to the financials.
Just for the room's awareness, so Hope sits in the waste team, the operational aspect of the waste team, which sits in city operations. So it's been a joint project between our two teams in terms of delivery. Thanks, Hope.
Sorry. Is that on? Yeah, so the rewrapping costs, they're done by one of the local printing organisations, and they've got proven experience in labelling those bins that we do use. They're a bespoke bin that we do get locally from Auckland, but yeah, they've got proven experience in that space, and we are re-looking at options going forward as to is that the most practical, cost-efficient option to be labelling our bins going forward, or is there something that's more long-wearing or to reduce those costs going forward. But that's the solution we have at the moment. Yeah.
Any further questions of staff? No? Make sure I check the room. No, that's wonderful. Thank you very much, staff. This is again a received paper, so can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Baker, second by Councillor Crowther. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak? No. Councillor Crowther, I don't even have to ask you that question. But would you like to speak now or later?
No, I'll speak. Just well done to staff. And I remember Nick at the time bringing that idea to us. And of course, it's a bit counterintuitive initially that you're scrapping recycling bins, but I think all for the greater cause, really. I do want to comment that I think it'd be really good to clearly state in a media release from nothing for 5 years, is what I understand, to something. I think that's the main point. And I do want to also say that two things. One is that I think this council should have been a bit more upfront, having addressed council explicitly on this issue before I was an elected member. It was like you could not get that very clear answer, which was nothing is being recycled from the public recycling bins. And there were all sorts of rumours, there were all sorts of efforts to try and get that information from various people. Why not just, to me, it's illustrative of just come out and say what the reality is. And then that takes me to my second lesson from this, which is that if you do something good and you're honest and transparent, then you don't need to have expensive comms. So in the paper, I think, Kim, you've pointed out that there hasn't been a massive PR campaign here. There's no YouTube videos or anything that I know of that are really getting huge numbers of hits or whatever. It's just something pretty basic. I think the Mayor did a message, is my understanding. Maybe there's a video, but nothing expensive. And I think that's because everyone I've spoken to about it just sort of says, oh, it's like a relief. The truth's out. The council's now admitting it. They're actually doing something about it. That's great. It's a good news story. So to me, hopefully, as an organisation, we take that lesson and go, let's carry that over to any other areas where maybe things are not as good as we'd like, and let's just be upfront and transparent. And then I think the public will get behind us a lot more. So, yeah, well done again to everyone.
Any other speakers? No? Councillor Baker, you're fine. Okay, so now that debate is over, I would put the motion that the City Delivery Committee receives the report, Public Place Recycling Bins, Delivery Update, Outcomes and Next Steps. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. We're going to take a break shortly, but before we do so, we would move into public excluded, because the next item on the agenda is in public excluded. So can I call for a mover and a seconder to... The next item is public excluded, which is 11.1. 11.2, the partnership agreement proposals. Is that not on your agendas in that order? Yeah, was it? Hang on, I thought there was... Oh my goodness. Yeah, we will take a quick break now. We restart the meeting, and sorry for the confusion earlier. We will not be changing the order of business, so now we move to item 9.3 on the agenda, major projects update transport. And welcome, you're already at the table. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Just to introduce, Andrew Ball is with us today, and he is the Transport Structures Asset Management Director at Beca, and has provided the assessments around, and together with the team, around the Harini Bridge. So first I'll just sort of go through the report, just give a high-level summary, and then I'm going to hand over to Andrew to take you through the work that's been done around that assessment. We're here to update on the major projects, the transport projects. It is those that are in or close to delivery. So just noting that connecting Mount Maunganui and Cameron Road Stage 2 will be, they report into the City Futures Committee. And with Cameron Road Stage 2, we are currently looking for a date in August for a workshop with Council around the feedback that we've received on the public consultation, and to seek endorsement of a preferred design as a result of that feedback. So that's not being reported on today. With respect to the report, there's no major changes to update the committee on from last time. And so the key thing that we really wanted to bring to the committee today was an update on where we had reached with the 15th Ave to Turret Road project. You'll recall that there was a first gate to move through that we would be seeking endorsement from Council on, which is the structural assessment around the Harini Bridge, and that's the purpose for Andrew being here. We'll be coming back to the August committee meeting to seek endorsement of that decision. But for today, we wanted to take you through the work that's been done and where that assessment has, where we're at in the process, and what the next steps are around that. So that's what Andrew will be taking you through, and to answer, he's here to answer any specific questions around that technical assessment. The other is that you may have noticed in the report that there is an opportunity to consider a standalone shared path to sit alongside the bridge. The original proposal through the business case was to have a clip-on, and it's been identified that there may be some, or are likely to be some benefits in the MPV around that, but also from a delivery perspective to provide an option or some better options for the way in which we may be able to manage disruption if there is a standalone bridge. And just the only final thing that I was going to address today is that I know that there is deep interest from Council around the way in which we will manage the integration of Cameron Road Stage 2 and 15th to Turret in particular, to ensure the least amount of disruption for communities. We are we're not updating on that today, but to reassure Council that that is front and centre of both of those projects, how that will be managed. Both projects are at an earlier design phase, and as we work through the design over the coming months, for the rest of this year and into next year, we will be looking at the sequencing and the delivery programs for those, and we will continue to involve Council and seek comment around and feedback around the way in which we'll do that, and then we would look to bring and come and workshop with Council and seek endorsement of the final delivery plan. But that is not likely to be until towards the beginning of next year. So while we're developing up those designs, we wouldn't be at a final stage, but we will be working through and planning over the next the coming months. So unless there's any specific questions around the content of the report, I'd propose now to hand over to Andrew so he can take you through the work that's been done on the structural assessment.
Welcome back, Mayor.
Thank you. Just like to make a note. So the 15th Welcome Bay, no material change from last update, and then we get told that the structural investigations and analysis of the bridge, has been developed. So I would have said that's quite a significant update because we've never heard of that before. I just, could have flicked over that, saying there's no material. So that was just a comment more than a question.
Thank you, and I take your feedback on that.
Awesome, thank you.
Councillor Crowther, you got a question for
on the report. I noticed that the image of tracking the timeframes for the project. So we've I think we've reverted to the February. Oh, I don't know. It's maybe February or even April of this year. But when you track those over time, it's a really interesting experience, as I've sort of got it laid out on my page. And I'm just wondering, are we actually going back on what was presented to the Joint Transport Committee, or is this because this goes back to, April was the most recent we saw this, but the Joint Transport Committee had a very different impression which conveyed a very different image to the public, and they've already commented on that to me. So it's like, I think we need to get crystal clear which is the most up-to-date, the one that went to the Transport Committee or the one that is here in this agenda, because the time frame is noticeably more concurrent between Cameron and 15th.
The only thing I can suggest on that, because there should not be any change, and they are, from our end, were placed into both those reports in an identical way, as in they were transposed in. If given that it is high level, maybe in the way in which it was presented, it crossed over, but there is no difference between what was presented at the Transport Committee and what has been presented here from our perspective.
Perhaps then, through the chair, to clarify, anyone watching, is the earliest possible construction for Cameron Road Stage 2 late 2028 or late 2027?
Yeah, so through the chair, comment on that one. I think what was identified there is obviously Cameron Road Stage 2, we're looking at an end date deliverable as a key driver that sits around that in terms of the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund funding agreement. Yep. In terms of, you'll note on the graph the timeframes for the design phase and the pre-implementation phase haven't changed, but I think what we've identified is, in terms of the construction programming and sequencing for Cameron Road Stage 2, there are potentially opportunities of how that will get phased in and alongside 15th Ave to Welcome Bay. And so I think what you're referring to is we've identified, it's not necessarily we're bringing forward the start date of Cameron Road Stage 2, but it's there's an opportunity there to look at how those integrate and overlap in terms of how that best fits with 15 to Welcome Bay, rather than we will hold off on Cameron Road Stage 2. It's a work in progress at this point in time. So
no,
there's,
I think
there's
that's very
an earlier
helpful.
Start.
Yeah, and I think for my colleagues, through the chair, I think the Joint Transport Committee has a visual that would be very helpful for that, which shows not, as Chris said, not a commitment, but a possibility to bring that forward, the start date forward a year, should we wish to pursue that project.
Thank you. Now over to you, Andrew. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. My name's Andrew Ball. I'm the Transport Structures Asset Management Director at Beca. By way of background, I have 24 years of experience in bridge engineering, and the majority of that is in delivering life extension measures, retrofits, refurbishments. Sorry. Excellent. In my role at Beca, I provide oversight to Structures Asset Management Services, and our collective team manages several thousand bridges, largely the majority of those across the Golden Triangle. I work closely with the Transport Agency and am currently working with them on a peer review of the highway structures operations manual. And I mention that because it speaks to situations such as what we have here with the Haureni Bridge, where we're needing to undertake modifications to an existing structure. The Haureni Bridge structural assessment, I guess, we're going through the Gateway 1 phase presently, and the purpose of that is to assess whether the bridge itself can support proposed works. Those proposed works being that we're creating 3 traffic lanes, installing new upgraded barriers, allowing for current and future proposed utilities, and also building a clip-on shared use path. The bridge structural assessment includes a condition assessment, various different performance assessments. We've got edge protection, gravity loading, seismic loading, hydraulics. It also includes a review of compliance and risk. Speaking to the status of the structural assessment, the condition assessments and the performance assessments have all been completed, and they have been issued along with the scheme as proposed to the peer reviewer for their review. We're working through that process with them now. While that's been happening, we have met with 2CC's Building Consent Authority to appraise them of the findings and to discuss with them the proposed consenting pathway for the asset, which was set out in the scope of the project as a key activity. Going forward from here, we need to close out the peer review and issue to Council the structures assessment report. We'll then meet with Council's BCA again and confirm the consenting pathway. At that point, it will be with Council to confirm that the go requirements of the go-no-go decision have been satisfied. Speaking now to the structural assessment outcomes. We've made the assessment in context of it being an existing bridge, and it has existing bridge performance standards to be met rather than new design standards. You can't hear me? Sorry. All right, sorry about that. The structural assessment that we completed has been made in context of it being an existing bridge and existing bridge performance standards being the goal, as opposed to a new bridge which has new bridge design standards. What we've found through the assessment is that the bridge is generally sound and it's capable of supporting the proposed loadings as mentioned earlier. We've found the seismic performance of the bridge is not detrimentally affected by the nature of the proposed works. There are always some key details when we're dealing with existing structures, and while these be reported more fully in the structures assessment report, the key ones to mention here today are the piles are at risk of degradation due to chloride ingress, so degradation being corrosion effects. We've recommended a galvanic cathodic protection system to be installed across all of the pier piles, providing nominally a 35-year or more service life for the existing bridge. Our assessment has found that the edge beams are slightly deficient and would require localised strengthening, or alternatively, because it's quite a minor deficiency, a minor departure from the bridge manual would be an acceptable pathway also. We've assessed the maximum pile loads and have found that they increase due to the eccentricity of the shared use path on the structure. But we've also looked at the pile geotechnical capacity and consider it to be adequate for those increases in loads. There remains, though, a risk of a relatively minor settlement occurring on the structure post-construction. We'll now turn to next page. Jane introduced and shared that we would talk a little bit about a shared use path review. So the go-no-go decision as set out is based on confirming the feasibility of the clip-on solution. Can the bridge be modified to take a clip-on? Within the team's proposal, we identified that a standalone pedestrian bridge had the potential to outperform a clip-on solution, and some of the key reasons why it might outperform a clip-on solution are the potential for reduced construction disruption by taking the work offline or away from the immediate carriageway. Being a new shared use path, fully new from ground up, it has the opportunity for enhanced resilience as it will be designed for modern standards per bridge manual. Also, it has the potential to have lower was expected to have lower whole-of-life costs. And the reason behind this is we only build that infrastructure once. So we build a new shared use path now rather than building a clip-on, which is subsequently replaced in the future when the existing bridge requires replacement. So the independent structures options review is ongoing as we speak, and we will include within that a net present value assessment to provide, I guess, a little bit more insight and aid decision making on selection between options. That's all I had to cover today.
Thank you very much for that. Any further questions? Councillor Morris, first time today, and then Mayor Drysdale. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you again, Andy. You age very well, which is why I didn't recognise you before. You still look the same as you did about 10 years ago. In seeing a lot of bridges around the country, how does the Hairene Bridge compare from an earthquake perspective, the current one and any of the mitigation or enhancement measures that we may do as part of this project? How does it compare? Because I'm thinking key transport corridor, earthquake risk. It's obviously not as good as a new one, but how does it compare to some other ones around the country?
So in New Zealand, we've got a wide range of structures, and much of our transport network are really quite aged structures. I guess the question that has been asked through the process so far is, can it be modified without making it any worse than it is right now? And how it will behave has been reasonably well documented up until now. So from a comparative standpoint, there are many other structures that also share vulnerabilities, seismic vulnerabilities, as does this structure. That doesn't mean that it's not a bridge built to new standards. It's an existing structure with, I guess, the shortcomings that come with an existing structure.
I guess I'm asking for a risk calculation, which you may not be able to do. But what does it look like in terms of your sort of maximum probable earthquake for the Tauranga area? Is it gone, basically?
The causeway and materials immediately surrounding the bridge are prone to liquefaction and lateral spreading. So there is a key risk associated with that. That has been set out, and I won't speak to specific numbers, but it is set out in the reports as to where that currently sits.
Yeah, I had a question around the potential clip-on or different bridge. You can see those piles that are existing. What sort of state are they in? Are they able to be used?
We weren't proposing to use the existing piers. They were built in, I believe, 1923, and we would not consider them to be able to provide adequate level of service or resilience.
Okay. They look pretty solid, but...
I think we have Councillor Kurak online, and then Councillor Taylor, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Andrew. So in respect of those redundant piers, so if we're not utilising those, is the plan to put the cycleway on the other side of those piers?
The current proposal is looking at a shared use path in essentially the same location as those existing piers, and that avoids needing to have the pedestrians cross the carriageway.
Does that also mean that they would have to be demolished, those existing piers?
I think all options that are on the table have some degree of clash between the piers and the structure, whether that be a clip-on or whether that be a independent shared use path. I guess with an independent shared use path, you do have the opportunity to adapt the design to have a reduced level of clash.
And in terms of disruption and the proposed cycleway being separate to the bridge, does that reduce disruption due to the lesser requirement to close the actual bridge to construct that?
essentially, if we are building a clip-on as an extension to the existing bridge, there's a lot of work in very close proximity to the lanes. The construction of an independent shared use path that can be done slightly further from the existing structure and therefore reduce that interference.
Great, thank you.
Just before I pass to Councillor Taylor, just on that too, in the disruption, would it also have an impact on the length of time of the project, or more around the, is it a daily commute type benefit, or is it an actually overall better delivered project?
I think it'd be fair to say that we probably don't have the answer to that in terms of overall durations at the moment, but that will likely come through as that assessment further develops.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Applaud the idea that we might have a separate bridge. I think that's probably quite a good idea. The further we can bring our pedestrians and cyclists away from the road, the better. I do remember from the Battle of the Bridge with Councillor Baker that there was some wildlife on those existing piers there, so they won't be taken away, I wouldn't think. Is that?
No, again, we're well familiar with the ecological. There's an existing habitat of particularly some terns through those that you'll be familiar with. So again, that'll be assessed in terms of through the options and opportunities. But I think, as noted, through all of the options, there is going to be some impact to the piers in terms of some conflict. So we're going to need to do something in that space in terms of the existing piers, regardless.
Tēnā koutou, thank you for the report, presentation and general update. So with the standalone kind of being something new introduced to us, do we have a rough cost, or is it going to be covered, same cost as the clip-on effectively? Do we know roughly?
That will be come out as part of the review. So at the moment we are reviewing the options, and we'll provide costings or indicative costings for the alternate solutions.
And any ETA on NZTA funding, noting that it's one of the risks?
So the project, so we have pre-implementation funding, and the project is currently prioritised within the National Land Transport Program. So that means that it is more likely to get implementation funding than a number of other projects, but we need to get it to, if you like, the starting gate through this by April of next year to be able to make use of that funding.
The Mayor and then Councillor Crowther and then...
Yeah, I guess if we're now potentially looking at a single standalone bridge, what's your experience of actually building an offline bridge, that solves the problem rather than mucking around with it? Does it add a lot of extra cost to put, an extra lane on another bridge rather than actually working on this one?
We'll work through that as part of the current optioneering. I anticipate that there will be an increase in cost in terms of capital expenditure today, but we also need to review the whole of life cost and whether perhaps that might be cheaper in the longer term.
Well, I guess if we take into account disruption, building an offline bridge that potentially has the increased, you'd suddenly, it'd be interesting to see what the difference is.
Thank you. I'm wondering, the Chapel Street Bridge earthquake risk versus Haurani, is that something you've come across in your studies of bridges across the Golden Triangle, or has TCC got information on the relative, to Councillor Morris's point, the relativity between those two bridges?
I think Andrew noted that he's not across the Chapel Street Bridge, so can't speak to that one. I know within Council there is information around Chapel Street Bridge in previous investigations. I haven't got a summary of that to hand, but we can...
Perhaps we could have an action point, because to the Mayor's point, I think that's really key understanding of offline versus online, because I'm aware of what the scenario is around Chapel. And this other question is, will your NPV calculation for the clip-on versus the separate shared pathway, or shared bridge, will that be according to NZTA guidelines or Tauranga City Council guidelines?
The present intent is to follow the NZTA monetised benefits manual and the discount rates published within that.
Okay. It'd be very good if I can address Chris to let us know if that's not the case. Thank you.
And one more for Councillor Baker.
Sorry, I forgot. That report, is that loaded somewhere we can read it, or is it to be uploaded? The let me find it. The condition assessment, blah 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 report.
Just the proposal is to bring those reports to Council in August for endorsement. So this was just to give you an opportunity to ask questions, get further information before we bring that report. So that will be able to be uploaded.
So we have to wait almost 3 months, 2 months, carry the 4, to be able to read the report that's been completed?
So the reason why the report is not being presented now is that it is the subject of a peer review, and that is still not closed out. And so once that is closed out, and also there is an application that needs to be made to the Building Authority for some of the departures. So all of that information pack will be coming prior to the April meeting, and we will have Andrew here again as well for those questions to be able to be asked.
Councillor Crowther, welcome back.
Just sort of, can I please, Andrew, if you can clarify when your report on the comparative analysis will be complete, and Jane, if you could clarify when we will see the results of that report, hopefully this year, I imagine.
The NPV, the comparative between the SUP, clip-on and independent, I understand that we'll be delivering that sometime mid-July.
Sorry, I maybe got confused when I was answering your question. The first question was around this, that I thought you were referring to the strengthening report. So that we're working through, but yes, the other report will be, I can't at this point advise when we will be seeking endorsement around the two options, because it will form part of the overall design as we move through. So, but if it's to be completed in July, what I would anticipate, subject to whether it needs further review, that we would seek to bring it in August for some endorsement or decision around that, or whether there's further work. But until we see the results of it in July with the comparison, I don't want to confirm the date just at this point.
Okay, thank you. I believe I can see Councillor Kurak. You have your hand back up again.
Thank you, Chair. So we see under the first paragraph in regards to this project, a key risk is confirming operational issues around the tidal flow arrangements and safety issues, particularly around the side street intersections. So as a key risk, is that potentially a go, no-go, or would it just be a delay in terms of finding a design that would work and be efficient, effective and safe?
I'll speak to that one, Councillor Kurak. So we don't anticipate those as go, no-go decisions, but there are obviously risks that we will be working through the design phase and the design development phase, which is, we talked about, we're currently in Gateway 1, and that's a key part of Gateway 2. So as those risks are either addressed or we'll provide updates as we progress through that design development phase in terms of the status of those, but we don't anticipate them as go, no-go decisions at this point.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, hopefully I can finish off the questions here. Just following up on the Mayor's question about the potential for the offline option. The question, I suppose, is that would then become a 4-lane bridge option as opposed to a tidal option, because that is what we're limited by with the current bridge, and that informs a lot of what's done on. So did I ask a question on that? Because my assumption would be that would look at a full Monty future-proof, but yeah, curious to know what your thinking is there. Obviously, it'll come to us later anyway.
So the proposal for the existing bridge is to convert it to 3 lanes from 2 lanes. The shared use path is a clip-on, essentially a lightweight clip-on. No intention as part of that for the clip-on to be capable of carrying traffic loading. So essentially we're looking at a shared use path which is either a clip-on to the existing bridge or as a fully independent new structure.
I didn't ask the question, and maybe I didn't hear you right, Mr. Mayor. Were you talking about a potential totally new bridge as an option? Yeah, so the question for me is, if you look at the other option, would that then be a 4-lane bridge, or? I think maybe you misheard the Mayor.
The independent option that we're looking at is just to provide a shared use path independently. So essentially providing nominally the same width as what is presently proposed as a clip-on.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so I guess my question was, if we're going to go and build a standalone bridge, you know, that was the question was, in your experience, if we added traffic lanes to a new bridge, you know, how much does that significantly increase the cost? Because building an offline bridge is still a better solution.
I guess when we're looking at a shared use path, we're looking at a relatively lightweight structure, whereas when we're talking about a road bridge, we're talking about a substantial structure. So it depends on what is the most cost-effective option. At this point, we're trying to find the most cost-effective option for a shared use path, and therefore would expect there will be a substantial uplift in cost if we were to then add traffic lanes to that.
That provides good clarity for me. Yes, Councillor Crowther, I'm not going to...
Sorry to take time. I guess because people will be watching this and will have this question, that the Auckland cycle bridge became notorious. Other cycle bridges, the Wairoa River, you can scale it all along. They are very expensive bridges for what, you know, compared to what we're talking about, I'm sure. But the hanging question, which the Mayor's question raised, is do we know what the cost of an alternative bridge would be, ballpark number, because that is what has never been made apparent. So if we're taking that philosophy of delivery time being valuable and we want to do a cycle bridge to reduce delivery time, the same argument is used by our community, by hundreds and hundreds of people saying to people like us in our community, why don't we do that? And it'd be great if you have an answer to why we're not doing an offline option. Is it cost? Is it something else?
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers to hand on that, but certainly that was a key consideration through the development of the business case, and those options were assessed in terms of obviously upgrading the existing structure versus building a new independent structure such as a new 4-lane bridge. So I don't have those numbers to hand, but we'll reference back through to the business case, which should, I'm confident, will provide that context in terms of, I recall there was a significant cost difference, particularly in terms of affordability, which impacted on the viability of that alternative as a 4-lane in terms of the incremental benefits versus the incremental costs was a key consideration as to why the 3-lane structure is proposed.
No, good. That we should have clarity now. That's 16 questions in a row. So thank you to the EMs for the clarity seeking. We'll finish questions of staff there. This is a received paper. Can I ask for a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crowther to move and Councillor Roseboom second. Councillor Crowther, you'd like to speak?
Yeah, sorry, but I do have thoughts. I think it's great we're getting this paper now. I think it's fantastic. We're going to get more info by August. And I think timing is of the essence for some of these projects. I guess, to me, there's just this constant, maybe it's just who I associate with, but so many thoughtful people are just asking the same question, which is if it's so complex to deliver transport projects and it has so much impact, and the bridge is the sort of the hardest part of all our roading projects to deliver, an online bridge, you know, it'd be really good to get to the point sooner rather than later where we know for sure that we're going down the right track. And the three things that I'm interested in are, number one, the cost of actually delivering online versus offline. Is it as big as some of us are dreading it could be, or is it actually not that big a deal? And then the second thing is the earthquake issue in a relative sense. So of course, like, it's not going to make it a lot worse by the sounds of it, but you know, we know, I've sort of read some of what could happen if Chapel Street is taken out and there is an earthquake weakness there, and there's a resilience project in our plan. So what are we talking about there in a relative sense? Are we actually going to do this work, put it all online, and then find in a few years' time, as part of our resilience program, we have to do a massive upgrade to the bridge, and that could be problematic. And then I guess the third thing is just the sort of overall impact on that project compared to some of the other projects. And so the sooner we can get clear on that, the better. But those first two, I think, are sort of like action points for me, that we get that relative earthquake positioning as part of our network, and the other one is just that clarity around the Mayor's point, an offline bridge. Is that completely ruled out now that we're getting a bit more knowledge about the delivery process?
So thanks you, Councillor Crowther. So you just, those last two, can you email those through as an action, please? And then we'll, Councillor Roseman, would you like to speak? No? Anyone else like to? I think we have Councillor Kurak would like to speak.
Yes, I'm keen to see how this will progress in terms of developing options. And I think the issue with the offline 4-lane bridge would be the fact that the existing road, Turret Road, hasn't got capacity there to meet the requirements of the bridge. So a new road would have to be either that road extended or widened, but you have got the issue of the trees, or do it on the other side of the trees, which consenting would be a major problem, and a high cost also. So I think, I too, along with the hundreds that Councillor Crowther speaks to, would love to see another bridge in terms of resilience. It'd be a great outcome. But I think in terms of practicality, cost, and cost is a major consideration given the economic situation. So yes, I'd certainly like for it to be reconsidered and moving forward, and look forward to progressing the 3-lane option as well, and hopefully the risks around the tidal flow and safety issues can be resolved, because this has been around for a while now, and I think that sort of solution would be welcomed by the community, if not a 4-lane solution. Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Crowther. Correct, sorry. No other people to speak. One thing I will just comment on before I put this to the vote, paragraph number 6 in the report talks about the Tauriko enabling works. We've obviously been focused on a lot of interest, understandably so, in what's happening across the Haureni Bridge, but works are progressing on time and currently forecast to be delivered under budget. Savings of 25 million of unspent risk and contingency funds have been realised against the 241 million budget. So that's encouraging to hear, and those works also remain on track. So focus here today has been a lot about the upcoming programs, but good to see another roading project being delivered on time and under budget. So with that said, I will put this to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We now move to item 9.4, the action and investment plans. and annual and long-term plan actions monitoring. That's a very good title. Welcome.
Good afternoon. This is an annual report that we bring to you. Resolved last year to do it annually. It's quite a time-consuming report to prepare, as you can see by the length of it. Just taking the report as read, and we also have some options which we wanted to put forward to you about how the future of the report is reported to you. So we've presented 5 options with a staff recommendation of D. So happy to take any questions on that, but just with regards to the actions report themselves, I can take questions on board and take them back to the owners of the AIPs.
Yeah, perhaps if we have any questions, if there are, on that first, and then we can talk about the next. So, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for the report. So just a question on, we quite often hear from those that might be getting a community grant, or those in the community that they are, or staff, that they are working towards outcomes on that action investment plan, acknowledging that it's an extensive report and it takes a lot of time to prepare it. How is it then shared? You know, like do the owners of the action investment plan then go out to a group and talk about it? How do we actually, like, if this is adding value, then we need to be sharing that. So how does that happen in terms of engaging with the community that is receiving the outputs from these?
I'd have to check individually with the AIP owners how they share the reporting of that, but this is available on our website so that we could share it in that way. Sad
to say that just because it's on a website is not engaging. I just think that's something we really need to think about. If we actually are doing this, then we're doing it because it's adding value, but if we're not actually finding out if it's added value, then we haven't got a circular, yes, this is a good thing to keep doing, because we're not sharing it. And if it's taken a lot of work, can we think about how we might be sharing that, please?
Yes.
So we do have all of the original contacts of people who were involved in the development of each of them. So, I mean, we could, once we post this on our website, we could just contact all of them and just let them know it's there. But the primary purpose of these stock takes is for elected members to have that overview of what investments have been made, how each of the actions, particularly those actions that TCC is responsible for implementing, are they on track, are they completed, and if they're not on track, what's the reasons for that, and are you comfortable with that? And then that flows into, obviously, the next annual plan or next long-term planning cycle.
And if I may, Chair, respond to that, thank you, Christine. I think this is where we fall down on engagement. Like, yes, thank you, we get told whether it's working or not, but if we don't go back to, say, the people that originally supported council to set them up, if they're not involved, then it's quite hard for us to look at these and say, oh, yep, let's keep doing them. And this is where I'm thinking zero-based budgeting starts coming in to say, are these adding value to our people? And I can't speak for all the people that receive the benefits of these or the outputs. So to me, I would like our comms and engagement team to be involved in understanding how the community reacts to the outputs that we are reporting through these reports.
Yeah, I just think I'll make a comment there too, Deputy Mayor. This is a bit of an opinion and a discussion, so if you would like, we could have a discussion amongst ourselves after, just in terms of what we're dealing with staff. Are there any further questions on the first part of the report, and then do we move to any questions on the future reporting? Councillor Taylor.
What are the logistics in having this as a sort of a live document that we could dive into on demand almost?
It'd be quite challenging. To give you an example, we started compiling this report in April, and I think we finished the review about 2 weeks ago.
Yes, so that's kind of my point, that if it was something that everyone was working on in this day and age with technology, potentially there's some ability there to have it. Yeah, it might take a bit of work to get it up and going, but as it's going forward, maybe it...
Yep, not saying it's impossible, but yeah, there would be the investment and time to get it up and running.
Tangata Whenua representative, Rolleston Steed.
I'm just wondering, have you run any methodologies across, you know, how much, what time constraints logistically you'll have across those 5 different options, noting that, you know, where your option A is status quo, so that's probably the most comprehensive. But as you shift through those options, have you done some sort of analysis of what is actually feasible, but still gives us all of the transparency?
We kind of, not in detail, we took the view of like what would be the next level, but still provide the, I guess, appropriate amount of information to governance. So couldn't give you specifics on, like, say, what option D, but we note that because it's by exception, it's obviously going to be less time to compile that full report. So we'd still need to do the upfront work of collecting it to find out that there were exceptions.
No further questions? For clarity, we're all clear. Okay, thank you very much. Now that the questions of staff are over, can I call for a mover and a seconder? Got anyone? Councillor Roseboom? Yep. There's 2 parts of this, obviously. There's a receive and then there's an approval for the future reporting, but you're happy to move. And Councillor Morris will second. Councillor Roseboom?
I'm just confirming that we're all happy with option D. I see some comments around option A. Are we happy with option D? Councillor Morris has a comment.
I'm personally happy around option D. I think we need to be mindful of a value for money in terms of our organisational outputs, and we will be reviewing these shortly as part of the long-term plan. So I think that's the prudent approach at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Anyone else would like to speak to this? Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I can go along with that, but at this time is probably the key thing that you just said there, Councillor Morris. And I think in the long term, when we have a better understanding and probably a bit more input into the AIPs, if that's what we have going forward, we'll probably take a more consolidated interest in what each individual one is doing at the moment. So definitely like the reporting on exception, but yeah, not sure how it'll work.
Yes, Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Just question through you to officers. When in the long-term plan, draft long-term plan decision timetable will we be looking at action and investment plans?
Welcome, Jeremy.
Good morning. We haven't got a specific time frame on that at the moment. You've had, through City Futures, a bunch of stock takes on where they're currently at, where you've had the opportunity there to offer views if they were views. We've come back to City Future on the climate plan, for instance. That was a key one where we needed strong direction. There's another paper as part of your LTP issues list going to council on next Tuesday, which specifically talks about Mataranui, the inclusive city one, because there's quite a lot of that stock take, so there's quite a lot of direction required from council. We absolutely can. If you wanted to sit down and work through each of the 30-odd documents at half an hour a time, we could schedule that time for you, but we're going to need to put aside the best part of a week to work through it. So the other element then is through the activity planning, which each activity does. They'll bring to you what their plans are for the 10-year period, with a focus on years 1 to 3, as always. And that will then link back into, for some activities, those specific activity plans.
Yep.
If council's of a mind to consult on and adopt new community outcomes, how will the existing action investment plans feed into that process or be consistent with that process?
Oh, I guess that depends on what the new ones are. You have recently adopted your community outcomes for this LTP, so we've got a structure in front of us which we're working to. Each of the AIPs hangs off the current structure quite happily. If you decided to look at those 5 current community outcomes that you've got, and let's just remove 2 and find one new one which is completely different, then the impacts would be potentially significant, potentially minor, depending on what the words are.
Quite finished, Mr. Chair.
You have been very quiet today, Councillor Morris, so you can keep going.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Getting back into debate. Sorry, I hadn't quite finished what I was saying. Team, there is a lot of operational work that goes into these AIPs, and I think we need to have a real good look at that through the LTP. So just putting that out there. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I conclude.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I think a couple of things. I agree that we need to be quite proactively looking at these through the LTP. So wasn't necessarily thinking that we did half an hour per AIP, but I would start more holistically. How do we look at activities that the staff and community groups do, and what our community outcomes are, and work out where they interact and how they interact and what the outcomes we want from those are, which I think is a different exercise than just looking at status quo, because I just don't think we'll get change if we are dragged through 30 AIPs for half an hour each. We'll get very weary after about 6 and then not make any progress. I think at this stage of the proximity to the long-term plan, I'm not prepared to give up the detailed reporting, because in order to do exception reporting, you actually need to do the detailed reporting, because otherwise you don't know if it's an exception or not, I think. So I'm not comfortable with option D, but I think I'm also, it's not clear enough to me how we're going to look at this in the long-term plan. So I just would like some clarity, maybe as an action, on how we marry the community outcomes that we have set with the activities being planned by TCC staff and community groups that we fund, and where these action investment plans fit within that. Because that's not, and I'd like a map of how that happens, because it's not clear to me.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think we've heard a couple of sides of the story, so we have the motion that's in front of us is option D that's recommended. I would understand that if that did not pass, then we would remain with the status quo. So it should be fairly straightforward. Councillor Roseboom, would you like to close out, or are you happy? Good. Okay, so do we want to take this separately? So we'll firstly just receive, and then we will do the B. So just put to the vote the recommendation that the City Delivery Committee receives the report, action and investment plans and annual and long-term plan actions monitoring. All those in favour? Those against? And now to B, approves for future AIP reporting, a focused reporting on AIPs or actions that are delayed, at risk or require decisions, which is option D in the paper. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
So we have myself, Councillor Rolleston, Councillor Baker, Councillor Morris, Councillor Roseboom, and Councillor Kurak. And what's that up to? Oh, and Councillor Taylor. Looks like that is carried. Those against? Firstly, the Deputy Mayor, Tangata Whenua Representative Rolleston Steed, and the Mayor and Councillor Crowther. So that has carried. Thank you. We will now break for lunch for half an hour. So time now is 12:40. Back here at 1:10, which I note is 10 minutes into. Oh, I get it. I know what you. Okay. All right. So we've got 10 minutes to do one more paper. Thank you, Councillor Crowther. That's my conflict of interest. Okay. So we are moving quickly to. Thank you for that. Good to stay agile and on our feet. And it'll be a 1.5 hour lunch, I'd take it. Is that right? So item number 9.5, status updates on actions from prior City Delivery Committee meetings. I should have taken your advice. We've got, Craig, are you, is that you or? Welcome. Thank you, Councillor Crowther.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we have 21 outstanding actions, and noting that 3, I believe, were added earlier in the meeting as well, so we're up to 24. Most of the 21, 19 of them are well in progress, but not yet closed. Some of the action items connect to our monthly finance organisation improvement meeting that we actually held yesterday with the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and others. So yeah, that's the status, and I'm happy to provide comments on any particular actions that people want to discuss.
Yeah, that's what I know. And bearing in mind there will be some things to talk, but these are ongoing, plenty of time as well to discuss offline. But I'm sure there's a few questions of Craig, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I've got a number of questions. I've put mine in Stella. I don't mind doing these offline because I don't think there'll be a yes or no that you're going to be able to answer them. So if we'd prefer that, I'm happy that let's take, not take an action that's going to happen, but yeah, so I'm happy that we do that.
And probably to note, about maybe 10 weeks ago, we did have a offline session to, if you like, cull and purge and tidy up the actions, and so it may be that we do that again soon, building on the Deputy Mayor's points as well.
Yeah,
No, sorry, and I just think it's really, number one, noticeable that we've got a lot of actions and things are happening, which is really good, and I really appreciate the red showing that these are being actioned, but there are a number that just say update here in red text, so maybe not the whole organisation is quite being as proactive as some, so I just encourage that to happen, but yeah, really good that at least we're recording them, and I think we always need to think about how are we reporting back to where the actions, particularly if they've come from outside, as some of these have. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. And so, yeah, we can then pretty much take this as it is. It is good to see some progress, and I think it was a key point, Craig, you said that there are potentially some overlaps with that group, the efficiency group. So it'll be really good too, as part of that meeting, maybe see which ones we transfer over and which ones stay for our next city delivery. So that being said, thank you for your time, sir. And can I call for a mover and a second now that we've finished questions of staff? So Councillor Baker and Deputy Mayor Schooler. Councillor Baker, you wish to speak? That's a no. I take that. And Deputy Mayor? no one to speak. Anyone else would like to have any comments? No? Councillor Royston's shaking his head. Okay, so I'll put it to the vote. That the City Delivery Committee receives the report status updates on actions from prior City Delivery Committee meetings. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. So what we'll do before we break, we will go, like I tried to do last time, erroneously, is to go into public excluded. I've been given the okay by Anahita this time, so where am I exactly now? You've given me a new page. Right, so a call for a mover and a seconder to go into public excluded, which will be when we reconvene. Councillor Roseburn, Councillor Baker, all those in favour, all those against?